Before anything else, leave a like and subscribe, because today we've got a hot Manchester City update that affects January, affects the squad, and above all, affects how we read what Pep is seeing this season. And I'm warning you now, behind a new name, there's a clear message about what City want to fine-tune right now, and about what Pep thinks this team still needs to become champions again. Let's start the right way, citizen. Take a breath, because when the information drops that City are preparing a move in the region of 28 million for an English talent, and that it would have come from a direct request from Pep, it's not just another transfer rumor. When Pep asks for a player, he usually doesn't ask on a whim. He asks because he sees a role, a fit, behavior, intensity, spatial awareness. He asks because he's looking at the board and thinking, in this type of match, I'm one detail short of what I need. And at the same time, this is happening in a context where City's recent performances have been sending very clear signals. On one hand, the team looks more alive, more aggressive, with an energy a lot of people didn't think they'd see so soon. On the other, there's still that feeling that not everything is fully polished, like we've seen in historic versions of City. It's as if the team is building a stronger shape, growing tougher, but still searching for that perfect balance between control and ruthlessness. And that's where the first name in this story comes in, Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall. Pay attention to this choice, because what stands out isn't just the nationality or the Premier League talent label. What stands out is the profile. Dewsbury-Hall is a player of energy, stamina, late runs, ball carrying, and the intelligence to occupy more than one zone in midfield. That kind of player who doesn't need to be the most dazzling on the night to make the whole team function better. The type of athlete who, in Pep's system, can be an option inside, but can also show up outside, can press high, can cut passing lanes, can open his body and speed the move up when the opponent thinks everything is locked down. But citizen, there's a detail here that changes everything. They say Everton are in a comfortable position to negotiate because the player would be tied down on a long contract until 2030. And that matters. A long contract is a club's message. If you want him, it's going to hurt. And with City, when it hurts, the club thinks twice because City don't move on impulse. City move on conviction. And there's another element that makes this feel like maximum attention. Dewsbury-Hall's season would be catching eyes for his numbers and his influence on matches, with goal contributions, assists, and especially because he's becoming a piece that connects the midfield to the players up front. And that word, connect, is gold at City, because one of Pep's biggest demands is that the team is not a bunch of loose parts. He wants the team like an electric current. When the ball reaches a point, it needs to know where it goes next. Who supports, who sets the wall pass, who attacks the space, who pins a marker to free a teammate. Now, before you get carried away or turn your nose up, let's be fair to reality. There's a huge question mark on the table. Dewsbury-Hall came off early in a match against Chelsea, showing signs of discomfort in his thigh, looking like hamstrings, and you know how tricky that is. There's an injury that looks small and keeps you out for 2 weeks. There's an injury that looks small and keeps you out for 2 months. And January, for a club competing for everything, is not a month for risky gambles. January is a month for precision. So I'll ask you, citizen, does it make sense for City to go hard into a deal that could involve big money, a long contract, and on top of that, a short-term physical risk? Because one thing is liking the player. Another thing is needing him now, immediately, with the calendar chewing through the squad. And that's where the conversation gets even more interesting. Because when we look at City's moment, the first image that comes to mind is Phil Foden. And that's no accident. Foden has been the heartbeat of this recent surge, with that kind of performance that's a joy to watch and scares opponents. Because he doesn't look like he's trying all the time, but he's always hurting you. And there's a part of this story that says a lot about Pep's mentality. After a 3-0 win over Sunderland, Pep praised Foden in a way that strongly implies the following. Even when the body isn't 100%, Foden can still deliver intensity, can run the whole pitch, can attack the space behind the defense with bursts, can win the ball back, can be the player who gives you an extra plus without you having to change the entire plan. And when Foden hits that mode, Pep treats him like a rare gem, because he's the type of player who changes the face of a match without noise. He occupies the right space, he shows up in the right channel, he plays the pass at the right moment, he speeds up when needed, slows down when needed, and when you have that kind of piece, you start thinking, do I really need another attacking midfielder right now? Because we also have to put on the table what's undeniable: City remain dangerous in attack. Erling Haaland is still Haaland, that player who turns half a chance into a goal and makes any defense play in fear. And when you have that, the discussion about an attacking signing becomes almost a matter of detail, of variety, of extra options for specific big matches. And then the question changes shape. If City are going to move in January, what are they adding? More creativity inside? More late runs into the box? More intensity in the press? Or are they correcting the fluctuations that in some matches have cost avoidable goals? Because a lot of people look at City and say, if there's one area that sometimes gives you that warning feeling, it's the defense. Not because City suddenly became fragile, but because in league matches, in certain moments, the team has suffered from mistakes that don't match a champion's standard. And that's the kind of thing Pep hates. Pep accepts an ugly match if it's necessary, he accepts suffering in a block if it's necessary, but he doesn't accept gifts. He doesn't accept a goal born from a lapse in focus. And in that scenario, when the name Dewsbury Hall appears, the fan base splits. Some people think this is perfect for Pep's style, a versatile, intense player who can bring life to multiple roles. And some people think, fine, but what about the center backs? What about protection? What about the silly errors? And you can't call either side crazy, because both are logical. Elite football is this: you strengthen where it hurts, but you also strengthen where it can become a decisive edge in a big match. But as if that transfer rumor wasn't enough, we have the second front in this update. Pep talking about the title chances, and talking in a way that both calms you down and pokes you. He comes back from Selhurst Park smiling, happy with a big away win, but without selling the illusion of perfection. And that's very Pep Guardiola. He celebrates, but he always points out what's missing. And when City come back with another away win, the second of the week, and stay on Arsenal's heels with a short gap in the table, the fan feeling is that the team is, yes, in the race. And being in the race at this stage of the season is the minimum you want. But Pep doesn't live on being in the race. He lives on building a machine that survives the calendar and doesn't lose control when the pressure tightens. He even mentioned that the match in Madrid was a kind of test. A test not only of quality but of adaptation, because every match demands a different approach. And this new City are still learning how to manage certain moments. And here's an important nuance. When we say new City, it doesn't mean City became a brand new team from scratch. It means there are younger pieces, new dynamics, and a need to mature decision-making inside matches. Even so, look at the size of the message. Going to the Santiago Bernabeu, in an environment that swallows teams, and getting a huge result, is a sign that there's character, there's composure, there's competitive strength, and then coming back and confirming it with a strong performance against Crystal Palace, on a ground where it's always awkward to play, shows it wasn't a one-off magical night. It was an answer. It was a sequence. And he also mentioned the detail of Jeremy Doku's injury, which forced a change. And that matters because when City lose an explosive piece, they have to compensate with more positional intelligence. Doing that without collapsing is a sign of the group, a sign of the dressing room. And Pep let slip that he likes what he's seeing behind the scenes, the mentality, the way the squad is reacting, the seriousness. But he was also clear, there's still room to improve. And the point he keeps hitting is the point every champion hits after they've become champions. Managing matches, learning when to accelerate, when to slow it down, when to kill the game, when to accept suffering, when not to give the opponent a reason to believe. Because you can win a match with brilliance. But to win a league, you also need to win matches with maturity. And now I want you to stop and think, how many times do we look at a season, and when it ends, the story becomes, it was easy, it was perfect, they blew everyone away. And it's almost never true. Pep reminded us of that. Even in the years City broke records, there were tough games, tight games, days when resilience mattered more than aesthetics. And that's a message to the fans and the players. There's no spotless journey. There's a consistent journey. He acknowledged that in Madrid it wasn't perfect, but the fight was there. And that matters because that kind of match molds a champion team. There are matches that give you confidence because of the scoreline. And there are matches that give you confidence because you realize that even without being brilliant, you can endure. You find a way. You don't break. And when a team learns not to break, it becomes a real contender. Now hold on to that feeling because it connects directly with the third part of the news that a lot of people are letting slip by, but that could become a very relevant point in January. Claudio Echeverri. Pay attention here, citizen. City are considering ending Echeverri's loan at Bayer Leverkusen early, and the reason is simple and brutal. A 19-year-old seen as a very strong prospect is going through a frustrating spell with few minutes, little continuity. And for development, that's almost poison. A young player needs a run, needs to make mistakes, needs to get things right, needs to live the match. Training at a big club helps, but it doesn't replace real rhythm. And what makes this story even more interesting is that, back at the start, City's plans seemed different. The original idea was to take Echeverri to Girona, an environment where several City football group youngsters get more minutes, in a style that's more aligned, with less shock, with a smoother bridge into Pep's system. Minutes, confidence, progress. But the players' representatives would have pushed for Leverkusen, betting that the Bundesliga would be the ideal stage. City agreed, even though it wasn't the first choice. And now, looking at reality, the bitter question is, was it worth it? Because if he barely gets on the pitch, if his role is uncertain, if Leverkusen themselves would be open to ending it early, then the loan loses its point. And then you get a dilemma that always shows up in modern football. What's better for a developing talent, going back somewhere familiar to rebuild confidence, or sticking with the European path even if it demands a tougher adaptation? Because there's information that Echeverri would like to return to River Plate, the club he left in 2024, seeking a reset, a restart, an environment he knows. But City, from what it looks like, don't like that idea. City prefer that he stays in Europe, competing at a high level, getting used to the physical and tactical demands he'll face if he wants to become a real piece of the first-team squad. And again, you can't call either side crazy. Going back can be great for recovering joy and minutes. Staying can be great for speeding up adaptation to elite European football. And the most important thing, January is the month when City usually resolve this kind of situation. And with new people leading decisions and the recruitment department weighing the future of the squad, this case is likely to become a big topic in the corridors of the Etihad. Because there's a detail worth gold. Echeverri has already shown flashes of why he was signed. When he arrived in England in January 2025 and spent months learning Pep's methods, there was a moment that caught a lot of people by surprise. He was used in the FA Cup final against Crystal Palace. Even in a painful defeat, he came on well, changed the game, made an impact, and came close to equalizing. That stays in the club's mind. That becomes proof that, with rhythm, there's a player there. And when you put that in the context of the 2026 World Cup getting closer, the scenario becomes even more delicate. Because for a young player, the clock moves fast. If he goes months without playing, he not only stops developing, he also loses ground in his national team, loses confidence, loses timing. And City don't want to see an asset of that size sitting still. That's why reports indicate City would be willing to trigger a return clause, because Echeverri would no longer be able to reach the appearance targets needed to keep the loan on ideal terms. And if Leverkusen aren't going to put up a barrier, the talks move forward. The question for you, citizen, is direct and heavy. What's smarter right now? Bring Echeverri back to Manchester to train close to Pep and stay under daily observation, or place him in another short-term loan where minutes are practically guaranteed and he feels the game in his legs every week? Because there's a big difference between being in the right environment and being in the right environment playing. And when City think about a young player, they have to decide quickly. because every window that passes without minutes is a lost window. And notice how the three updates speak to each other. A possible signing requested by Pep assessing the title race with clarity and demands, and the club trying to fix a loan that didn't deliver development. Everything points to a City side that's competitive but wants to fine-tune details. And the team that fine-tunes details at the right time is usually the team that lifts trophies at the end. If you enjoyed the updates and want to keep getting everything about Manchester City firsthand, leave a like right now, because it helps this video reach more citizens. And make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any news, especially with January coming and the market heating up. Turn on the bell so you're notified the moment a new video drops, and comment below with your opinion. Would you bring in Dewsbury Hall? Would you prioritize another area? And what would you do with Claudio Echeverri? Thanks a lot for watching, we're together, and see you in the next video.